the acceptance of the 2016 audit report.
Sure thing. Any other?
Sam, you were supposed to know tomorrow, didn't you? Did you have?
Well, that's 1 and 2.
Oh, it's 1 and 2, okay. Okay, all right.
Any others members of the public? All right, do you have a motion on the consent agenda?
Make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Second that.
Roll call, Vito?
Mr. Bergen?
Yes.
Mrs. Duffy? Yes. Mrs. Ford?
Yes.
Mr. Canella?
Yes.
Mayor Smith?
Yes. Okay. Item G, comments from the public. If the public wants to make comments on the items listed in the agenda only, you can do so at this time. However, we have 2 public hearings tonight. The public hearings format is there'll be comment period in each item of the public hearing. So if you have other comments you wish to make this time about the other items of the agenda, this will be the appropriate time. Seeing none. Next item is a public hearing for the 2017 municipal budget. Can I please have a motion to close the public session and start the public hearing?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None heard. The format here is going to be our clerk is going to be giving us a presentation along with our CFO.
Hi, I'm Tina. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the administrator and the municipal clerk and the purchasing agent. And I have with me Tom Caro, our finance officer. And I also have Ralph Cohn from our audit firm of Vinci and Cadence. And for those of you who have been here other years, it's pretty much we'll show the same slides with different information. And we have maybe some additional information as well. So, just let me grab one thing before we do that. The committee held meetings as they usually do. We had 2 budget meetings and we participated and took direction from the Township Committee to put this budget together. And so hopefully everybody's happy with it. The first thing that I like to explain, and for those of you we work with 2 caps with our municipal budget. One is for the appropriations and one is for the levy. And just to give you a brief overview for those of you who aren't familiar with municipal budgeting, our appropriations cap is regulated by the cost of living adjustment. So the state tells us how much we can increase our budget by, and every year they give us that number. This year the COLA was 0.4, and municipalities are permitted to increase by 3.5% by ordinance, which the municipality has done as long as I'm here. And that is only a paper number, and what happens is if you don't use anything that is banked, you lose it after 2 years. So it's nice to have it in reserve, but you don't need to use it. You can let it sit there for 2 years and then that number just goes away. And this is our levy cap, and this is just a little history on it. It refers to the 4% levy cap on local units from 2007. In 2010, that was superseded, and the cap now is at 2%. And the levy is what our tax rate is. That is what we charge for our residents for your taxes. So in 2017, the allowable operating appropriations within CAP came to $15,587,833. And that number actually is set by the state, and that's based on last year's budget. They start with that number and then just move on from there within the CAP. The proposed budget appropriations within the CAP for this proposed budget is $15,301,755. So we're about 280, well, we're probably exactly 286.78 under that cap. So we've done a pretty good job of staying within the cap and under the cap for the most part. So within cap, and this is what's within those numbers, you have your department operating expenses, your salaries, your legal fees, your utilities, engineering, and the state allows you to charge certain things out of cap or to raise that. And that's debt service, road repair and improvements, LoSAP, which is the pension plan for our volunteers, and capital improvement fund, which is the fund that we put a reserve in for any bonding that we have to do during the year. When you do an authorization for a capital project, you are required to put a 5% down payment on that authorization, and that's what that fund is for. Budget comparison, we just like to put this up for everyone to see throughout the years where we've been. So the average increase over 5 years is about 1.89%. And as you can see, we have some fluctuations there. And for instance, if we get money from FEMA or do an emergency appropriation, that either adds or decreases our budget. Anything, and Tom, if you want to say anything, please add. Okay? Or Ralph. This year we had some adjustments and in our budget. We had an emergency appropriation for $185,000, and that was for legal fees. And also we had an over-expenditure, which was very unusual for us, but that was for $500,743,000. We also had to take in a 319H watershed grant. For grants such as that, you have to show it on both sides of your budget. So you show it as incoming, and also you have to show it as an appropriation. And we had the legal appropriation.
That's the
increase. Oh, okay. That was the increase for this year's budget. Because we ran short last year, we wanted to, the committee wanted to make sure that we didn't run short this year, so we put in an extra $525,000 to that line item. That line item right now sits at $900,000 for this year. And also the Environmental Commission had approached the committee about the ash tree borer, right? Right. And they requested some funding to start addressing that throughout the township, to start injections and preventive measures for that spreading throughout the township, because we have many ash trees and we don't own all our trees. So the committee agreed to appropriate $30,000. And this is the appropriations breakdown by category. And this just is a pie chart. And it just shows what percentage is for which departments. You want me to explain it, or are you good? I think it's pretty self-explanatory.
Could you give us the percentage for legal?
Sure, you can go back. What is the percentage? Legal is 5%. Okay? And you're good? Okay. On the revenue side of our budget, and again, we like to put this up so you can see some of the things that we're dealing with. Our state aid has been stable. It hasn't increased. I think the last increase, 2010, you know, I think I wrote it down. Pardon me? What has decreased. It decreased in, give me a second and I will tell you when it decreased. I think I wrote that down because it has been
7 or 8 years.
yeah. Right. In 2011, it was it started where it was reduced to this number. So we haven't had an increase since 2010. I think you were right. Okay. Another important part of our revenue side of our budget is how much do we make on investments. And again, this is a number that over the years has similar to our personal finances, has gone down drastically. We used to rely on this as a very good revenue source for our budget, but now, as you can see, our numbers are very low because of interest rates. And we try to be creative in our investments. That's Tom's job, but there's really not much we can do about that. So the number that we're anticipating, and again, you can't anticipate more than what you've received or collected the prior year. And last year, our number was $34,721. And so, again, being on the conservative side, because you don't want to bring it to the max, we've put in $30,655.
I might add that also if you take a CD out, it's usually long-term, you know, probably a year or two to get a higher interest rate. But the problem is you tie up your money too long. In a municipality, you can't really do that. Just to make a little bit more interest, it doesn't really pay. Ralph had something.
I was just going to say that New Jersey law limits to what you're also allowed to invest in, so they're all very safe, conservative investments, so you really can't, invest in things that are potentially going to bring a higher rate of return because you're not allowed under New Jersey law.
You can invest in the stock market.
Correct.
No junk bonds.
And this is the history of our surplus. And we're, again, as the administrative staff in the municipality, and I'm sure the committee as well, we're very happy with keeping our surplus up in numbers. We've had some tough years, and again, it's a very important number. It's especially important when we go out for bond rating, if we have a bond sale, which we recently did, and we're rated by the Standard & Poor's or Moody's. We just went through one of those reviews, and we maintained our AA stable rate. And again, this is sometimes difficult to do because you have to generate that surplus. And again, we use surplus on the revenue side of the budget to balance any tax increase. And so it's a very important number to, and we usually like to keep about 10%. Is it?
About 10% of your budget.
About 10% of our budget is the number that we like to maintain. And we've done a pretty good job. And we usually try to use half, maybe a little bit more depending on the year and our expenses. So again, we're happy with that number. And this is our the revenue side of our budget, and this is what we the breakdown of that revenue side. And this is where we get the money to support our budget.
Well, I was saying, it's very typical of New Jersey municipality that the majority of the revenue source comes from local taxation, with a very small percentage coming from state.
Right.
Pretty typical of most New Jersey municipalities.
Right. And actually, that number was down by percentage, I noticed, from last year.
Usually
Came
around
down from
70.
73 last year, this is 69. And again,
The key is to do what you, with the amount of funds you have to have strict management and pay attention to this, because as you can see, the smaller numbers don't really help you. It's the taxpayer.
reserve for uncollected taxes is a number that, a calculation between Tom and our auditors. They come up with this. This is the actual amount of money needed for our budget, or to run the municipality, I should say, including these schools, am I correct?
County,
And the county, and the library, all that, right?
the 73 million is all of that, not just the municipal.
Right. So, in other words, we're responsible, we collect the taxes for the school, and then we pay the school. So, if people don't pay their taxes, we still have to pay the school. So, that's why we have a reserve. And we calculate that reserve based on what we're going to need to be able to meet our obligations. And then we divide that, or we multiply that by the collection rate, and that's the rate that we anticipate. And we come down a little bit lower sometimes than we actually receive the prior year, and just to be on the safe side, because we don't know what's going to happen with the economy. So again, there's your calculation. So it's the funds needed times the collection rate, and then that number is subtracted from what we actually need. And then we actually put that number in the budget, and we raise that money, and we keep it in reserve. And again, if we don't need that, that is a number that we will use, will go to surplus. And again, looking that we do need that surplus sometimes to keep our tax rate down.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Yeah, this is pretty unique to New Jersey. This is a non-spending appropriation, and you really need it for two reasons. Reason number one is, as Nita mentioned, you're never going to collect 100% of your taxes. So your revenue is all based on anticipating collecting all your taxes, but there's always going to be some delinquencies at year end. So this covers you for that. The second reason you need this, as Nita mentioned, is that the local school tax, the regional school tax, and the county tax, they get 100% of their levy regardless of what you collect. So you have to turn over to them 100% of your levy, and any cancellations or any tax appeals that are granted, the municipality takes 100% of that hit. So you need this non-spending appropriation to cover you for that as well.
There's also other states, what was it, New York, that would anticipate their whole levy. Is that true, Ron?
Yeah, because New Jersey does not follow generally accepted accounting principles, you don't realize the money that you're taking in cash.
Because New Jersey municipalities do not follow generally accepted accounting principles, they only realize the money as it comes in cash. So you're not allowed to accrue the receivable for taxes at year end into your surplus.
Municipal debt. And this is, again, just a slide showing the history of our debt, which, as you can see, has gone down since 2010, and our ending in December of 2016, our debt was $54.7 million. Okay, the local tax levy. The budget as introduced for 2017 indicates an amount to be raised of $14,445,980. Now here we'll look at the history of the amount to be raised. And as you can see, there are increases. And again, people have to keep in mind some of the increases that running municipality face, many increases. And we have 5 union contracts in our municipality. At times we have up to 100 employees. And we have operating expenses, we have equipment, we have materials to salt the roads, we pave roads, we do a lot. So this is what we need from our residents to help us along here, or to support this budget, I should say. Assessment, and again, here's a 5-year assessment history, and this year we have gone up a little bit. We have added the Regency development, the toll development, which has increased our assessments to a little bit there, and we're very happy about that. And that helps, of course, balance our budget as well, because we're getting some additional taxes. The breakdown of the 2017 rate, and again, this is estimated, and again, I don't know which ones you have in, Tom, for sure, but I know for the county.
First 3 are estimates.
Okay.
Ours in the open space are definite.
Okay,
They
so
should be reasonably close.
it should be a good estimate. We're usually pretty close, or you are. For this year, the rate would be $2.85, and the change from 2016 is
5 cents.
5 cents. We have an increase of 5 cents.
5%, isn't it?
5 cents. It depends on the value of your house. You multiply the 5
Yeah.
cents times your house value.
Yeah, this is your total rate, though.
You say that 5 cents per 100?
Per 100.
Yes.
Could you just spell that out for everyone? It's 5 cents per
It's 5 cents per $100. I think that'll come on the next slide. Top? Is it? Right?
This is just our rate.
This is just our
That's
rate.
ours.
So the previous one was for everything on your tax bill. This is broken down for the municipal tax rate. Do you want to explain it? You can do it better.
What you do here is you take the value of the entire town, which is 2.6 billion, and you divide that into the money you need for the local budget, 14,445. You divide that number into the 14 million, and you get 55 cents. So then you multiply the value of your home on the books times that 55 cents, and that's the local tax rate.
Divide by 100.
Right.
Pardon? 55 cents. Your house.
Say your house is 400,000
Yeah.
times 55. That would just be
$100
the-
of assessed value.
Right, and I think we have a sample in here. So your overall tax rate is broken down, again, another pie chart just showing you how it is broken down. So your township is about 16%, and your schools are your local school and your regional school, 100 and Central. We have an open space tax of 2 cents. That's 1%. So the majority is your local school, and your county is 16%. And that's it. Again, this will be online if you'd like to look at it a little bit more. So the cost of running a municipality, the average tax bill in Readington is about $11,400, and that includes everything. And the average tax bill for municipal services, and again, we base this on 400,000. I think our average home is probably a little bit less than this, but just to round it off, we put it at 400,000, is about $2,212. So out of your tax bill of the 11,400, $2,212 is what we get here at the municipality to run the municipality. And again, what do you get from that? And the list can go on. And just a few things on here. You have your police protection and your road maintenance equipment, maintenance of township-owned properties, your curbside garbage and recycling. And again, that's something that's a little bit confusing to some people because a lot of people don't realize that you are, with your stickers, you're only paying for the tipping fees. And your curbside pickup is included in your actual, in your tax bill. We do bid that out, that contract out. And I think I figured it out when at one point it was about $100 within your tax bill. It was about $100 per household, or that was for a year actually. Yeah, I think it was 100. And so a lot of people don't realize that that is included, and it really pays to use your stickers rather than the cards. Because you are paying for some of that for the curbside pickup in your tax bill. And elections, the municipal court, for municipal court, again, you're paying for all the staff in the municipality, municipal court staff, if we need interpreters, the prosecutor, all that's included in your tax bill. And so when you look at the list, and we could really go on. And so that's what you get for $2,000. Not a bad deal. I think that's it. Okay? So if anyone has questions, questions are okay?
Quick question, what?
Susan Nagel, 2 High Ridge Court in Whitehouse Station. You talked about how you have money invested conservatively. How much money is invested?
Invest basically in checking accounts and,
No,
cash
what's the amount?
total.
Yeah,
I mean, it fluctuates month to month. The most is usually around $3 million.
$3 million.
Because it comes in, it goes out almost as quickly as it comes in.
Okay. And I understand the new tax rate, excuse me, for 2017 was 285. You said the actual rate in 2016 was 280. But what was the estimate that you thought the tax rate would be in 2016, last year?
I can tell. I have last year's presentation. But you have to give me
You don't really know until the County Board of Taxation brings all the pieces together.
No, I know the rate.
And then you end up with that comes out in August.
While she's looking at it, maybe you can answer this question. I see the value of all property, and I guess it went up.
Went up 18 million.
Went up, the value of all property rented as tax.
Went up 18 million from 16 to 17.
And how much was Merck given a discount? Not a discount, but reassessed.
We'd have to speak to
We'd
the
have to
assessor.
speak to the
The assessor handles that.
Okay, so even with Merck going down in assessment,
Well, Toll Brothers and a few others came on.
it went up
Went up 18 million.
18 million.
And the number from last year that we estimated was 278.
So it was off, what, 2 cents.
Okay, so in January of 2016, we were paying at 278, and then in August, there was an adjustment to make it 280.
280 and 16.
You mentioned that court fees are I guess, I don't know, what court is that?
Municipal court here.
Municipal court. Okay, but when people go to municipal court, don't they have to pay court fees?
They pay some, but we get very little of that, because a lot of it is
The
state.
A lot of it goes to
Yeah.
the state.
A lot of it goes to
See,
the state. I don't know what the.
They divvy it up. Different fines go to different places. Doesn't all come here.
Okay, so it doesn't cover the court.
No.
Do you know what the court actually costs us?
Let's see what we budgeted.
Yeah, the budget side.
If it's in the budget, I can for it.
Yeah,
It's,
it's right.
I'll tell you-
We would
I'll
say
tell you,
operating. and-
Page 15C.
Page 15B,
C.
C, C is in.
Right. It's
C is in
about-
Charlie.
About 130,000.
Thank you.
Plus the public defender, right?
Public defender.
And there's 16 of that.
That's separate. 16 for the public defender.
Legal would cover the prosecutor, we can get that under legal, but public defender is separate.
Right, 16,000 for the defender.
Paula Baldwin, Morningstar Road. Just going back to that tax rate. So the budget is 55.3 cents,
55 for the
Per-
local
right?
per 100.
And last year it was 52.8,
Right, it was almost 53. It's 2.5 cents.
so that's a 5% increase. Correct?
Probably right, yep.
5%, okay. And in that 5% increase, you budgeted 900,000 for legal fees. But then you had deferred charges. What are the deferred charges?
I have deferred charges of 700,000. 185 was a legal emergency, and the other 500 was the excess expended in the legal. But that goes away in 2018.
But those are actual costs. So
The costs-
really,
Well, what we're doing is paying for it in 17 for the
that you
past.
would incur the previous
Right,
year.
so what happens in 18, that 700 becomes your money. You don't have to budget that again.
But you're budgeting 900,000, and then you're covering what we didn't pay for the previous year of 185,000 plus 500,000.
Yeah, 700
So really
is deferred
it's-
charge.
500, 600.
We
Paid-
we
we
paid
paid-
it, but we're just,
we
you have to
paid.
put it in as a paper number in the budget.
Right.
So we
paid.
don't spend it. We have to reserve like 700,000.
But we incurred it, so really.
Was it incurred in 16? Correct.
So what you budgeted in 16 was under
Wasn't
budgeted?
sufficient.
So you're catching up with these numbers.
700 is the catch-up.
So a total of 1.6 million.
900 is just this year's new money.
And 500 plus 185 from the previous years that you had to catch up. So 1.6 million, and the tax levy's 14.5 million approximately.
Right.
Right, 1.6 million out of 14.5 million, okay. And the aid to the fire company has been flat. Or
It's pretty flat.
120,000.
Each one of them gets 30,000 cash. Rescue squad gets another 30, it's separate. So it's 150.
Okay.
It's on another line item.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 900,000. And there's, okay, the Board of Health, are we the only township that has a Board of Health in Hunterdon County?
I'm not sure, Raritan might, some have the county.
Well, no, I think they still have a board though. I mean, we have the county does our inspections and they do testing and all, but the actual board, and as far as I know, the other.
Microphone thing?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't think I guess I do.
I'm not sure about other municipalities. I know one or two that have it. I thought Raritan had a Board of Health. Because I used to know the secretary. Did they give it up?
I have to look, but I think last time I looked, Readington was the only township.
I know that Alexandria has Board of Health. I know that they do.
Alexandria does, does anybody else?
I'd have to look it up.
Yeah, I would too, because I know the county has always done certain things for us. but the board has always acted on applications.
All right, because there's, let's see, 44,100 plus 42,000, so that's 86,000 that maybe
A
get
lot of
every
that
other
is
township.
a lot of that is well testing.
It's soil testing.
Soil testing.
So if I could just mention, so if every other township in the county other than one doesn't have a board of health, maybe we should, especially since we're spending 1.6 million in legal fees, maybe we should look to
We
say,
do have
maybe
a-
we should look to get rid of some of the
We
legal
do have a
fees.
lot of action in that Board of Health.
I'm sure Raritan Township does too, and they seem to get away without it. All right, so
That is
one
Board of
point,
Health is at least 1969.
well, just because we've done it in the past doesn't mean that we need to continue to do it.
And they're to make sure that they actually enforce laws, so they actually have appropriate septic systems.
Well, I believe also the statute requires the township to have a board of health. It's a matter of how the board of health is configured. It can be configured as we do here in Readington, a separate board, or it can be configured with members of the township committee, provided there's I believe a registered nurse as a part of that body as well.
Sounds like you've looked into it, John. Is that maybe an area of potential savings?
To be frank, I think it's, in my opinion, it's kind of majoring in minors. I don't think there's much to be had there, to be frank.
Maybe the legal fees is a big one. All right, thank you.
Other comments from the public? Let Don go first. Don, go first. We're at seconds.
Good evening, Don Ball with Morningstar Road. Same as the last week. I had a couple questions. That 55 rate, that's the municipal tax rate, which went up 5% from 52.8 last year. My memory serves me, in 21 years, I believe, I can recall the tax rate was 28. And it seems to have gone up every year. Am I wrong? Has it gone up every year? Has it ever gone down?
Well, it's the combination of the value of the town, which was much lower than done, and the rate. It's a seesaw. When the rate goes up, the value goes down, vice versa. If the more value you have in the town, then you can lower the tax rate.
Has it ever been lowered, though, in the last 21 years that I've been here?
You have to look at both pieces. This town has expanded, it constantly gets new valuations, people come on. That's what you're hoping for, which lowers the rate.
But the inherent values of the home, when it goes up, it's an automatic increase in revenue, isn't it?
No, the rate should drop. If you don't need if you need the same amount of money, the tax rate would drop.
Now, has it dropped in, it hasn't dropped in my memory, has it dropped in your memory?
It's really the amount to be raised by taxation. The auditor can correct me if I'm wrong. The amount you need to run
You
the
have to
place.
take the value of all the property in town, multiply times the tax rate, to see what your particular piece of that pie is. Whether it's gone down in the 21 years, I'm not aware of that factor or not.
In my memory, it hasn't gone down. And I was talking about the rate, which is the aggregate rate for everybody the same, right?
Sure, the only thing with the rate would be that if the rate is spread over more ratables, then your individual taxes may not go up even though the rate went up, because it's spread over a larger tax base. I just don't have that data to be able to answer your question.
Yeah, and I think way back, I know there were years where it
Wasn't increased. I don't think it was increased, but our ratables went up so high because there was so much development here. And then it evened out. And I think I recall that's years back though, that happened. And the ratables were so many because of all these developments, those subdivisions that were coming in. And so.
When was that? That we had a lot of subdivisions?
In the 80s.
No.
When Gary Hazuka was here, that. Also, remember, you didn't have the expenses done.
Well, I wasn't here in the 80s. I came in the 90s.
You
So.
came late.
Yeah, I came
And what happened was, there was like $3 or $4 million of surplus here because there were no expenses. Remember, you have contracts, et cetera. You didn't have all that stuff then.
Okay. I just could never recall it going down, maybe it stayed flat as being said.
I think I remember, I recall it being flat, but I really have to do some research to.
Well, the other thing I wanted to mention, I had a question for the committee. The legal appropriations in this town are appalling, to say the least. I did some research on the internet, and I looked at other municipalities in Hardin County. And the legal fees, nobody holds account. Nobody even comes close. If you look at the municipalities in Hardin County, you'll see small towns with $25,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in legal fees. The largest community, I guess, is Readington, with about 21,000 and change residents, more than we had by about 5,000 or 6,000. And it was a little over 500,000. And we blew through double the appropriation of legal fees last year, still carrying the pain this year. And the 900,000 that's delegated to that this year, I have no reason to believe that that might not double. It doubled last year, I have no reason to believe it might not double this year. I think it's ridiculous. The question I have is if that was your money, if you guys were involved in a protracted litigation with your family's money, would you pursue it as you pursue it now? By appropriating more and more and more, despite losses after losses. Would you allocate your own money toward that cause? I'm just curious. It's a rhetorical question. I'm sure you won't answer it.
Not us.
I think it answers itself.
About that.
What's that?
You've already prejudged what your answer would be. I think that.
Well, I'll throw it open then. Do you have an answer to the question?
Well, I'll ask you the first question you said. What does this town pay legal fees? You look at the last decade. We have gone, in 2007, the year of the initial airport legal case, we spent $1.1 million. Following year we spent, and that year we under budgeted and spent only budgeted $775. Following year we budgeted $685, this is 2008, and spent $715. After that set of cases, it got quieter. And for 2009 through 2013, we were budgeting $350, $275, and it's coming up at $350, $275. In 2014, the caseload between the sewer case and everything's ramped up. So in 2014, we budgeted $400 and spent $893.
$893?
That's what we spent that year.
More than double. Go ahead.
In 2015, we budgeted $375 and spent $500. Last year, we spent $375 and spent just over $1 million, it looks like. So yes, in the last decade, 2 years, we've gone above $900,000. I think based on the caseload we have now, where we are in things, trial cases can be very expensive compared to appeals. The sewer case has gone through its wave. We have all the stuff with affordable housing where we're sharing attorneys with other towns. I think that 900 is a good number. I could be entirely wrong, but I think it's more appropriate than we did last year.
With all due respect, Mayor Smith, put it into perspective. You can analyze other communities within the county. And the last time I did that was several years ago, and we were 8.5 times per capita in legal expenses. Now, if you're talking about the caseload, maybe we got to look at the caseload if we're spending that much money. But I would repeat my question. Would you direct your own personal family funds for that kind of litigation in view of all the many loss after loss after loss you've had in court?
The losses we've had so far are, if you go back to the history of it, the township at the time did a commitment case. Initially, the judge said, yep, summary judgment, okay. The appeals court said, no, you need to have a trial. Lots of quiet, we had a trial. We lost that. We were in the appeal. There was a second count about our zoning, which we thought was an independent case. That judge tied the second case to the first case. This is our first opportunity to appeal that. That's where the state has gotten so far. Do I spend my money? I think I would. I think if it was something that I thought was right, I thought that my fellow citizens voted, supported and voted for, I would keep going for that until I thought we got to the end point. If we get to the point where the appeals court says, no, we're not in the right, then that's a very hard decision to make. But the appeals court is only the second round. We happen to have 2 cases we thought were separated, which are now been joined by their decisions. So they're really tied together, it's 2 for 1.
And you really think there's a good prospect of winning those appeals? With unanimous published decisions at the appellate level, unanimous published decisions. And you think those are going to get flipped over?
The appellate level said you need to have a trial. You can't do this by summary judgment. That was the appeals court saying you know information.
Well, the last case you lost on summary judgment, the zoning case, it wasn't even heard. It didn't even merit a hearing.
Yes, that was the case where the judge said the secondary case depends upon the primary case, which we think is not based in merit or law. That's going to be up to the appeals court to decide.
And you think the odds are good, that's a good bet. That's good money after good, I guess.
I think we're this far down the pike. I think there's other things that are,
So it's time for good money after bad.
I would say it's good money for that. I think that based on our counsel for legal attorneys, we've gotten to this point. This is the most prudent choice that we have, that I think we have in front of us, based on the history we've gotten us to this day.
But as a municipal official, it doesn't bother you that we are many, many times multiples in that area of spending than other municipalities.
It all depends.
Yeah, you can't compare one municipality
Oh, you
with
can't, why
another
not?
municipality. Because we are being sued by developers and by people who are seeking sewer capacity, and we're
And
having.
maybe that's why there's civil rights cases emerging now.
We defend when we are sued, and the choice is to roll over and let developers decide what your township looks like.
I know you're doing God's work, but look, you guys lost the case, I think it was called Readington Holdings or something. And that was declared a civil rights violation, wasn't it?
At the trial court level.
At the trial court level, yeah. That sounds kind of ugly to me.
Well, you know, you can have your opinion. That's fine. We make these
I'm not here to
decisions.
talk about things, I'm here to talk about the numbers that's being blown on legal.
And
I pay
that's
taxes, I pay far more taxes in Raritan Township than I do in Readington, but they handle the money differently, I will say that.
Well, we can assure you that each and every decision with respect to our legal cases is made carefully and after a lot of consideration of the pros and the cons, and we make the very best decisions that we can for the township.
And your council directs you into this strategy.
Our council makes recommendations that we're certainly not going to talk about.
And even if you could talk about it, I probably wouldn't want you to talk about it. I just wish that there would be some thought given. When you say that you would spend your family's money in the same manner, I wouldn't have a problem with that, except you guys are spending my family's money.
We
And I have a problem with that.
We pay taxes too, Mr. Baldwin. I don't know if you know that, but we all live here, and we pay taxes as well.
Oh, I know. But you don't pay $900,000 next year. That
Neither
comes
do
from most of us.
I hear you.
Thank you.
Other comments? You have one, Susan?
Just Susie Nagel, 2 Harvard Court in Whitehouse Station. I just want to make sure I understand, I think I do. When the assessed value of all the properties in Livingston go up, if the budget was the same, our taxes would go down. But this year, I understand the value went up 18 million, but instead of our tax rate being staying the same, it increased 7 cents. So I just like to make that.
Thank you. Other public comments? Comments from the committee?
Yeah, I have a couple comments, Mayor Smith. One, I know we saw the chart that had the breakdown of all the expenditures, the pie chart, as a percent of the total budget. I tend to look at it a little differently and use the denominator in that equation as the municipal tax levy that we're collecting. So it goes from 20 million roughly to 14.5 million, at least in this year's budget. And the reason I look at it that way is just to kind of illustrate a couple of things that I think are important for everybody to know, and one thing that I had looked at for quite some time, and that is in this year's budget, there are really 2 line items or 2 items that constitute 1/3 of your 55 cents. And those 2 items are legal fees to the tune of about 1.6 million that we've talked about, and debt service to the tune of 3.2 million. When you look at those 2 items together and divide by the amount that we're collecting from our citizens, that is the 14 million, it's approximately 33%. So that's just another way to look at how your tax dollars are being spent, and I think that is a way that I at least have looked at it for some time, because that's the amount that's actually coming out of our pockets. One other item that I have with respect to what's actually in the budget, and this might be a question for Mr. Cohen, is on page 18 of the budget, there is a line item titled over-expenditure of appropriation, which we know to be the amount of legal fees that we overexpended in 2016. Wouldn't it be appropriate to at least parenthetically note that line as legal fees?
The line item, the line item in the state budget that says over-expenditure of appropriation is a pre-printed line in the budget, so there isn't any leeway to expand on that further. Some of the language in the budget document are pre-printed by the state.
Okay. I think, I guess one thing, whether I like it or not, and I don't like it, but I do like it, if that makes any sense, a little bit of contradiction, but at least I think this year, with respect to the legal fee line item, I think we're at least being intellectually honest with ourselves here on this committee. I don't think that's happened in a number of years, and while I don't like the number, I understand that it's a better estimate of what we may likely spend, and for that I wouldn't say that I'm grateful, but I'm at least glad to see that we're being, what I'll say, intellectually honest with ourselves.
Other comments from the governing body? Shall we close this public hearing and go to the vote?
Make a motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None heard.
Thank you, Rita. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Mr. Trump.
May I have a roll call, please, Gail, when you're ready? Oh, that's right, sorry.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2017 municipal budget.
Do I have a second?
Second.
May I have a roll call, so please, Gail.
Mr. Rogan?
Yes.
Mrs. Duffy? Yes. Mrs. Ford?
Yes.
Mr. Capello?
Yes.
Mayor Smith?
Yes. Okay, next up on our agenda is an ordinance of the Township of Readington. Sorry, wrong one. This one, okay. An ordinance of the Township of Readington and Lieu County, State of New Jersey, authorizing and approving a financial agreement between the Township of Readington and Whitehouse Urban Renewal Associates LLC pursuant to the long-term tax exemption law, NJSA 48:20-1, etc., otherwise known as ordinance number 05-2017. A motion to close the public session and go to public hearing? Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None heard. Okay, so who wants to move this? So we have the agreement. So we've talked in the past about having a payment of taxes and the change.
We actually have a financial agreement already under the HMFA with this previous developer that we originally started with. So now that she signed the agreement to the Whitehouse Urban Renewal Associates, they're going to use a agreement under the long-term tax exemption law. So this is really basically replacing that agreement.
Okay.
Do you want to go through the terms of it, or?
Why isn't there exhibit A?
I'm sorry that we're just talking about it here at this point. The financial agreement, are you talking about that? Is that
It
goes
says
on?
exhibit A, it's not here.
Exhibit A is on file with the financial agreement.
Well, isn't that what the total agreement code?
Yes, and according to the notice, it was available in her office.
When did I get that notice?
It was in the paper, I suppose, of when, in that last meeting.
You couldn't present it to us today?
We have a developer here and their attorney that they can go through with the financial agreement itself. I mean, it basically provides for a 30-year payment in lieu of taxes for this property, and it's based on their annual revenues minus utilities, and
So annual revenue minus what?
annual project revenues,
Minus what?
utility costs.
So if I recall correctly from looking at this, it's a 5% of the rent the first 15 years minus utilities, and then after that, we're going to come up to full tax rate ending at 30 years.
Over the first 15 years, it's 5% of the project revenues, and then after that,
After that's like a percentage, it scales up, or 5%, whichever is greater, or something like that.
For years 1 through 15, it's 5% of the project revenues, and as I said, project revenues means annual gross rental charges or other income. It does not include subsidies of the like payments they might get from federal government or such, and it's minus utilities. And then this is all being done in terms with the long-term tax exemption law, which is all set out in the statute. So parts of the agreements and the provisions with it are all set forth in the statute. So from years 15 to 21, again, the tax that we pay, or the annual service charge, is 5% or 20% of taxes on the value of the project. From 21, or whichever is greater. So this agreement does have the ability to increase the amount of taxes that are paid. Years 21 through 28, it's 5% or 40% of taxes on the value of the project. Years 28 to 29, it's 5% or 60% of the taxes on the value of the project. And years 29 through 30, it's 5% on 80 or 85 or 80, I should say, percent of the taxes on the value of the project. And after that, it's done. Okay.
No, nothing for the first 15 years?
Yes, so the first 15 years, it's 5% of the project revenues.
5% go to use as tax.
We're not questions, we come to microphones so we get to the microphones.
Right now, the property is not, right now the property is not generating any taxes at all because it's township owned. And over the first year, I believe the amount that would be getting, that the township would be getting would be $32,000 for that, the exhibit.
These are questions about the finance of this project.
The first year, it's $32,017. The second year, it's $32,617. It just goes up in increments. And then in year, let's just go to 15, it would be $41,000. And at the end, it would be $54,000. And after that, it would be regular tax rate.
Right. Since it's let's say 5% for 15 years of the rentals and the alcohol. Now, will that be used for the schooling, police officers, the township, or any?
And 5% of that, 5% of
Can it be
that,
allocated anywhere else?
Yes,
in Canada because it's not collected as a tax.
5% of,
We're still looking for tax money.
I'm answering your question.
I'm sorry.
Okay. 5% of the amount that's collected goes to the county of that 5%. The rest of it goes to the town.
And counties, like I said,
Yeah,
it's still
it's-
get allocated
yeah.
anyway, not just.
Yeah, that's how it is.
Sir, can I have your name for the record?
It's Peter Shapley.
Thank you. So we can identify you in minutes. Any other questions for the public about this ordinance?
And right now, it offsets the project cost to the developer, which it's going to cost him about $18,158,000 to do this project, which is about $238 a square foot. And over the 30-year term, they would collect $1,193,16. And that's basically it. I don't think I have anything else they want to add.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. I'm Kate Coffey from Dave Pitney. I'm here on behalf of the applicant for the pilot. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. The only thing I'll add, and thank you Sharon for the overview of the pilot, is that as Sharon mentioned, you do already have a pilot agreement in place for this project, and the currently proposed pilot is better for the township than the previously agreed to pilot because it has those incremental step-ups. It was not included under the prior pilot agreement. So we believe that the pilot's in the best interest of the township and also for the project because it allows this project to be as competitive as possible for low-income housing tax credits, which is assisting the township and the project in creating a realistic opportunity for the creation of affordable housing.
Thank you. I think I saw some hands. Community.
Dolores Wilhelms, 8 Nelson Street, Whitehouse Station. This ordinance, does this have to do with the redevelopment and housing?
Yes, is that, it's part of the agreements we have with development.
Okay, because I would like to address that. I recently read the 2016 preliminary investigation of the area in need of redevelopment in Nelson Street tract.
Is the public hearing about the specific ordinance for the financial other pay taxes?
I have a concern about that the township may be in violation of adopting this, that they really didn't. The report is incomplete. May I continue?
Which report is incomplete?
The preliminary investigation of an area in need of redevelopment to fulfill the criteria that Nelson Street tract would fall under the criteria for redevelopment under paragraph C.
But this is a hearing
Paragraph C
about...
what? Paragraph C, that had to fulfill, so that the township could proceed with this development there under redevelopment. One would be that the property is owned by the township, we're not disputing that. The other is that it has a concern that conditions make it unlikely to be developed privately. And so, therefore, it's not being developed privately. The person that prepared this used Falone's two-building application to say that the property was not developable, it was prohibitive to be developed by a private developer. So at the time of this report, the zoning there would allow 14 single-family homes or 20 age-related.
I think that, I hear the argument you're making right now, however, we're talking, and we've already gone through and approved the redevelopment plan as a township. Right now, we're talking about the specific ordinance for specific financing.
Okay.
If you want to argue things we've already approved in the past, that would
Okay,
be
you
a
know
different
what?
forum.
Yeah, well, forgive me for not coming to meetings and being ignorant and not having anybody from my neck of the woods sitting on any boards here. But it's just when this came to light, I said, what's going on? And I don't know where to, I really believe that the township is in violation of the redevelopment law.
Yeah.
Where can I bring that up? Even though it's sort of a signed, sealed, and delivered deal at this point. And I don't mean to throw a monkey wrench into your plans and perhaps create another lawsuit, but I'm questioning this because it's the law.
I would just like to make a comment though about
Sure.
that whole thing, because I keep hearing people saying that Mr. Falone had no intent to develop this property. That's not true, because I personally was contacted by his attorney back in 2014 when none of these people were on the committee, and they she offered, on behalf of Mr. Falone, to sell this property to the township and saying it would be a great affordable housing site. And when I sat in a meeting with Mr. Falone and his son and some people from the township that are not on the committee now, they said that the reason that they had no intention to develop this property is because they did not want to pay for Nelson Street and to the cul-de-sac. So it sounds like that they were not going to develop this property for a subdivision.
Okay.
And that's why they wanted to
It was
sell it.
prohibited. So, but here's, see,
And that's, again, you know what I would say? I would say bring these comments about whether or not it's a redevelopment area, which the township's already voted on. Right now, this is an ordinance about the financial agreement, but we have another section of the township meeting, which is for public comment.
okay, and
Say whatever you want.
as the township attorney, I would like to say one more thing to you. If you would look at Judge Orlando's decision regarding paragraph C, and if you go to this,
I honestly don't know what paragraph C you're talking about. Is it some section of the redevelopment law?
yeah, the criteria for the township to fit into the criteria that allows the property to be considered for redevelopment. So perhaps this is the place. I'm very happy to discuss this with you.
Why don't you bring us back at the end of this meeting tonight?
Certainly.
We have a public comment session, we bring up any topic you want. Let's bring this public hearing just to the topic at hand.
I understand, thank you. I will wait to the end of the meeting, thank you.
Scott Scanlon, Trail Road, number 71, 69 and 80. Section 3 on here, repealer. All ordinances and resolutions or parts thereof inconsistent with the ordinance are repealed. Could you be more specific as to what that stands for?
It's a general repealer clause. So if there's any other ordinance that's inconsistent with that, it's being repealed. It's just pretty much in every ordinance that we adopt.
So this one supersedes anything before that?
Would it have anything to do with the motion that was made by Ms. Duffy, the resolution in the first place, saying all property owners within 200 feet were supposed to be notified by the planning board?
Okay, now that one doesn't have anything to do with this hearing either.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm just looking at this repeal, and it doesn't give me any idea that that was the only thing that I'm familiar with. The planning board never said they didn't have to provide that.
Again, I mentioned this at the last meeting too, that the planning board attorney and planner had already looked at that issue about the notification and had determined that they were not, when the township committee asked the planning board to notice people within 200 feet, that was something that was not required by the statute. The statute, the redevelopment statute, said that when the hearing is held on whether or not the property is a redevelopment area, by statute it says that what the notice should contain and who it should go to are people who are within the development area. And so there's a case out there with Verizon Wireless where a town adopted notification requirements that were in excess of what the statute requirement and the court held the town to be, their actions to be invalid in doing that. So the planning board's section, they're independent of us. We gave them a copy of the minutes, said, gee, can you be nice and notify people within 200 feet? And they felt that, I'm sorry, I'm just magnanimous maybe, and give extra notice. They determined not to do that, and that wasn't in accordance with the law.
Not to give the notice?
Not to give notice to people within 200 feet of that area.
The planning board attorney, upon advice of the planning board attorney.
But as a good neighbor and as a council, don't you
Again,
think we should have notified everybody?
The courts held the towns did not have the authority.
No, I
to
heard
see
that,
the
I
ordinance.
heard her mention that before on the other case. But I would just think that it would only make sense in a project of this size and the impact it's going to have on Whitehouse Station. And anybody who drives down Main
Well, I
Street
think in
or
the
Whitehouse Avenue.
in the Verizon case, the court reasoned that there has to be a balance with respect to how far you go in giving notice, and that's what the law said. So it's a shall. It's not you can, or you
Well,
want
I
to.
don't think they handcuff you. I think you can probably notify anybody you want. You know, I think there's certain ordinances that say, or laws that say, you don't have to. That doesn't mean we shouldn't. Right.
Other comments about the merits of the ordinance that's proposed here tonight?
Susie Nagel, 2 Highridge Court. I appreciate you explaining everything in Exhibit A, but you spoke so fast it was hard for me to hear everything you say. I understand the first 15 years it's 5% of the revenue, less utility costs, but you said something else about any income that they get from somewhere else?
Yeah, the developer may get subsidies. I don't know if they are in this instance or not, but they may be getting subsidies from, I don't know, the state. They might be getting grants towards this project, or the federal government. That's not included as income to them.
Okay, so that's not included as income. Okay, that's what I was just want to make sure it wasn't deducted. Okay. And then the county, if I understand correctly, gets 5%.
Of that 5%.
I mean, wait, if we only get 5%.
They get 5% of that 5%.
Oh, 5% of the 5%. I thought they got the whole 5%.
No.
Okay, thank you.
That's nothing, that's a lot, it's 5%.
Other public comments? Comments from the governing body? I have none, I'm ready for a motion.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay, so we close, I have a motion to close the public hearing and go to closed session.
So
Second?
Go ahead.
We got a hand here. Sorry, I didn't see it, come on up.
Sorry.
we didn't vote on it.
We had a motion and a second, but no vote. No.
Hi, Denise Hupka, 90 Violet Court in Whitehouse Village.
I'm sorry.
Denise Hupka, H-U-P as in Peter, K-A, 90 Violet Court. Thank you. Now, I understand that residents within 200 feet, it was said here, and I believe that Mr. Romeo apologized for residents not getting a letter at the last town committee meeting.
That's correct.
That is correct, okay. Well, I appreciate the apology, and most of us were here until very late that night, and you were the first person to apologize, and then everyone else apologized, so you kind of like felt a little regret that the people within 200 feet were not given that letter. And I'm sure that had this been your residence, you would have expected that letter. If somebody's making such a demolition or changing your life and changing your residence. Now, the people that were not given this letter, and I understand that.
This is not about this word we're talking about tonight. This word is about a financial agreement.
Well, this is something that needs to be said, and it does really.
And
being that you just expanded on that, I just wanted to kind of reiterate also, and I appreciate that, okay? So these people who did not get the letter, and I understand that sometimes it's excessive with other towns, but that does not mean that no letter should be given. And I
If
believe
we're
that,
prohibited by law to send excess notice, we're prohibited by law.
okay, excess notice, yes. But Ron Monaco at the last planning board meeting said that he was legally advised, at the last planning board meeting, you were there, Ms. Ford, and he said, yes, we all were. So he said that he was legally advised because it would cause bigger problems or bigger trouble. What did he mean by bigger trouble or bigger problems? Because he didn't expand on that exactly.
He meant
What Sharon said.
the ordinance would be voided. If we overturned, cast aside.
Forgiving people within
Because it
200
was
feet.
improperly done, yeah.
Okay, so what, in past
Well, that would
practice,
have been improperly done had we done it.
Yes, that's right.
We didn't know that.
in past practice, how long do you give residents notice within 200 feet? What standard for
What is
Readington?
legally required under the municipal land use law.
But what is standard for Readington?
What is legally required under the municipal
Which
land use
is?
law. Which is, there are all sorts of development
I'm not really
applications.
sure if I understand the question, because when we have a notice for a hearing, that's done in the paper, and I guess we do it on the website, right? But it's really only required to be in the paper.
If there's a legal notice.
If there is an application before the planning or zoning board,
That's what I'm
people
saying.
within 200 feet receive, of the boundaries, of the edges of that property, receive notice by certified mail.
Okay.
I don't know the time frame. I don't know.
Well, are you aware that residents received a 3-day notice before the last planning board meeting? 3 days.
We
You
can
think that's
have
proper
discuss this, but
notice?
not part of the public
I
hearing.
have no idea what's going on at the planning
So-
board, that's at the planning
And
board.
why is there such a disconnect between the
Because
town
they're-
committee handing down
Because
and the
that's a different
residents of the planning
application.
board following through on it?
That's a
I
different
mean, it's
application.
extremely, I am not within the 200 feet, but I do live in Whitehouse Village, and I can understand everyone who lives on 523, and this is going up literally in their backyard, and not having notice until 3 days before, when this has been planned since, what, 2009?
We can take all these comments in the public session. This is a discussion about a specific financial ordinance. That is for a public hearing on this one topic only, not all the ancillary topics around it. So if you have a question about this ordinance specifically, we'll happy to take it. If not, I'll have to ask you to do this in the public comment section at the end of the meeting.
And I'll be back in public comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, the motion to close the public hearing. Who's public?
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Motion on the table. We have a second on the table?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None heard. We need a motion on this ordinance.
Make a motion to, approve this ordinance number 05-2017.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please, Rita.
Mr. Burley?
Yes.
Mrs. Duffy?
Yes.
Mrs. Ford?
Yes.
Mr. Capello?
Yes.
Mayor Smith?
Yes. Next topic on our agenda is correspondence of information there was enough. Moving into new business.
Oh, no, that's
Item number 1, refunding bond ordinance for the Township of Readington in the County of Hunter, New Jersey, providing for the advanced refunding of all or a portion of the general improvement bond series 2011, appropriating $7,800,000, therefore, and authorizing the issuance by the Township of Readington bonds in the aggregate principal amount not exceeding $7,800,000 for financing the cost thereof.
Want to say something?
Sure. What are you doing here?
We have approximately $8 million remaining on this, in this particular issue outstanding, and it's from a 2011 sale, and we're looking to get a better rate. At the time, we didn't do too well at that time, and we're hoping to be able to save between about $250,000 to $400,000 over the term, the life of the issue. If the bids come in where that happens, then we would go ahead and do this. Did I cover that?
It's like refinancing your house, basically, looking for a better rate.
Any discussion on this?
And if the bids come in where we don't see a substantial savings, we can reject those bids.
Yeah, you have, in order to refinance, you have to demonstrate to the state that you have at least a 3% savings net present value. And although you're adopting the ordinance, there's no cost out of pocket. That's all rolled into the refunding bonds that are issued.
So this is introduction of the ordinance.
This is introduction. Yes.
I would make a motion.
I have a question.
Tom, is this an actual, do we have to have an introduction and public hearing? No, this is just.
Just authorization to go
authorization.
ahead,
Yes.
and we,
That's what
try
I
for a
thought.
better rate.
I'm glad you're here. I thought that was what it was.
Okay, Sam, I saw we're ordinance.
You already, in other words, you already passed the ordinance in 11.
Okay,
It's just the funding mechanism.
okay. Sam, your question?
I just want a little education, maybe you could help me with, Tom. This is really a good job saving us some money.
We try to save where we can.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, there's still a big difference between this 7A and then the Solberg bond, comes up to 29.5 from the 54.7 million that we had coming into the year. That delta, is there anywhere in there that would
recent. So there, this 11 one was a higher rate. That's why we're doing it. It was around 4. So if we can drop to the 3s over the life of the bond, you'll save. That's the reasoning.
We're definitely getting better rates at this point. We just had a sale, and that's listed on the agenda as well. 100%.
We've got 3.37.
Yeah, we got a much better rate. That's what we're hoping for.
So we need a motion to approve this.
Yes.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Need a roll call for this?
Mr. Burton?
Yes.
Mrs. Duffy?
Yes.
Mrs. Ford?
Yes.
Mr. Capello?
Yes.
Mayor Smith?
Yes. Second item, bond ordinance providing for various capital improvements in and by the Township of Readington and the County of Hunterdon, New Jersey, appropriating $1,754,000, therefore, and authorizing issuance of $1,666,300 bonds or notes to the Township to finance part of the cost thereof. This is our standard yearly capital ordinance. This will be introduction after our discussion. Someone will walk us through what you proposed?
What we have listed in here are various road improvements, which include overlaying and reclamation to various streets. And then there are certain roads in there, but not limited to Van Horn Road, Cornelius Lane, Holland Road, that's Connor, which is the County Bridge, Indian Run, Van Pelt, and paving of the Ryan development. Also, the acquisition of a dump truck and a spreader and asphalt hot box, and the replacement of the fire alarm panel and improvements to the Department of Public Works roof. Let's see what else we have in here. The acquisition of playground equipment for Pickle Park for safety reasons, actually, and the replacement of the telephone system throughout the municipal buildings. That would be this building, the police department, and public works. The acquisition of radar signs, the signs similar to those on 523 in Readington, Whitehouse Station, and also down by the intersection. And this would fund 4 additional signs. And that's it.
That's common for us to bond $1 million to repave roads, our general road maintenance,
Yes.
as our road take out.
These are, a lot of these are roads that were in the heyday of all the new subdivisions in the 80s that are now coming due.
And you can't let them go, Betty, because if you do, you skip a year here and there.
Gets worse.
It deteriorates, then you spend more money.
Right, and one other thing that is not, that I should mention is the generator project. And for some reason, I'm looking, I don't know if I'm missing a page here, but that was included in this too. And this is through a FEMA grant. We received, the FEMA grant is for about $232,000. And this was for 2 standalone generators. One is for the East Whitehouse Fire Department and one is for the Whitehouse Rescue Squad. And 6 portable generators, which would be used by our OEM department. And we have already been approved. We have this grant, but when we receive these grants, we have to actually fund the project and do the acquisition of the items, and then we're reimbursed. But this is definitely a grant that is in place, and we will be reimbursed for it. So that is also included.
I have some questions. This is new capital, which will.
That's correct.
Right? And I just have a general question. If we had the cash or it was in the budget, can you pay for this out of that, or do you have to always capitalize?
You could, if you had the cash, you could do a capital, like a cash ordinance, you wouldn't borrow. But very few people have $1.7 million hanging around.
Well, also, I'd like to offer a comment on that, because the whole reason for, and I understand the debt and that comes along with it, but when you pave a road, it lasts for many years. When you buy a piece of equipment, a dump truck, it's probably 15 years at least. And the premise behind bonding is that that cost be spread over that amount of years, because your residents come and go. And again, it's something that you should spread over time in certain instances. And of course, in some instances, if they're smaller acquisitions, if you have the cash, it is the way to go. But that's just
In other words, the resident down the line is going to benefit.
right.
That's why you spread it.
Just that, once you get to a certain point of debt.
And if it's a large amount like that, then it's difficult.
It creates other problems too. Is there any way to roll this into the maximum rate you have on the 7.8 million?
No, it's a separate bond. It was done.
This interest rate for this be much higher?
This will be no.
And you get the same good rate?
You'll get a better rate on this new one, like 2% or one, because it's temporary financing. The other one is bonds,
Okay.
which has,
So you can use temporary for 10 years?
right, I can go 10 years on a note, and it's cheaper.
Thank you.
Okay, for the public here, we're talking about introducing this and being public hearing on this, provided we introduce this.
Mayor Smith, I might have a couple comments or questions on this. So one, I really didn't overlook, I guess, till literally late this afternoon. And when I was going through some material and I brought it here, but the issue around 8 Brookview Road that we've talked about a couple of times over the past almost a year, I think it's and I saw Rob's memo, Rob O'Brien's memo that had it noted in one of his updates, I think, to the tune of fix that channel stabilization was 50 grand. And it's not in here, and I guess my concern is this, and I don't know if we've had the additional visibility into whether or not the township faces any liability by not doing that repair, which is fairly significant erosion as a result of a development that's probably 25 years old, maybe something on that order. So from where I sit, I guess if we're going to correct that deficiency, now would be the time to do it and include it in this. So I don't know if by introduction here we can amend this to include that amount, but it's something I think would be important to care for and be done with it, because I think I visited that area a couple of times and I think it's a problem waiting to happen.
I would agree. My only question is, was Rob's estimate based on it being done in-house or having to contract out? And I don't know the answer.
I don't know the answer, and I can tell
Well,
you
he
that
said
it wasn't.
planned bid services and committee, so it leads me to believe it's
Outside,
Outside.
okay.
And it wasn't something he asked me to a certain extent.
Yeah, and like I say, I overlooked it until I actually went through his memo this evening or this afternoon prior to today's meeting, and it struck me as something that we should try to care for, I think.
So what was his estimate?
50,000 is actually 49, would be 49,500 is what he has here.
You can answer it.
John, in the ordinance, it says road, lists the roads, it says but not limited to, so you could possibly sweep that out. There's like 900,000 of this ordinance for the roads.
Yeah, I guess my concern is if it's not listed, it can easily be forgotten.
It can be done,
what would you recommend, that we amend the ordinance to include it, or?
Well, it's not gonna hurt. I mean,
You could put it in.
You could put it in, but.
Be the same
but I agree
amount.
with Tom that we usually, again, these numbers are estimates and we do have soft costs involved in it. And this was for drainage.
Well, it was to correct, yes, it's a drainage issue that results from flow from a development on Federal Lane, I think it is, over there on the uphill side of Brookview Road. That was culverted underneath Brookview and has, over the years, created literally probably a 15-foot deep erosion.
Right.
That is fairly severe in terms of the banks that it's cut. And I think the resident that whose property it traverses was here about a year ago, I believe it was, asking that this be corrected. And his concern was, and I think I would have shared the concern, that if somebody's hurt there, the township probably has some liability.
Right. What we can do is maybe just add that to the description
Yeah.
rather than change the dollar amount.
I wanted it, John, is this a repair or is it like a capital improvement?
It's probably, I would say it's a repair.
Could be just a repair out of Scott's budget or somewhere else.
I don't think so. I think
Not if it needs professionals from the outside.
So
It may need
Well,
riprap or shoring up, or, it's pretty,
Ralph,
it's one of the natural wonders of Readington at this point.
Ralph, can we just add that to the list?
I think we can. I don't see anything. Reason why we can't. This is only introduction.
Right, you could just add that road.
In the purpose, in the first purpose, because I'm sure that we can cover that cost within that, the
Right.
organization.
So we'll put that in.
So various road improvements, including blah, 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 and then, after development, we can put, and drainage work.
North, south,
Now, the other, I would,
And drainage, can you just give me a little bit? And
yes, it's
drainage?
8, drainage erosion at 8 Brookview Road.
I don't know that we've probably just been on.
Okay, yes, 8 Brookview Road.
Okay, that's good.
I guess it's called channel stabilization. Uses, that's a technical title.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm glad you called that. Well, it brought.
Yeah,
It wasn't even in this.
Thank you. Now, having said this, at the risk of being a little conflicting again, perhaps, I'm concerned, while I think this is a fairly modest bond issue that we're looking at here, and I think all of us realize that we need to maintain our infrastructure and keep it up to date. What does concern me, however, is as we're looking at this bond issue, I think we have a number, or several other items that are likely to require capital expenditure during the coming year. And as I mentioned when we were talking about the budget, and I pointed out the amount